Feast your eyes, ladies and gentlemen, because all of this is about to go. This too, you too, Spidey. Delete this, get rid of that, don't need this code. Perfect. If this is your first time to the channel, my name is Andre Gerauts. I've been doing game development for some time, and I finally decided to work on my dream project, Tempered Flames. Now as you can see, I've made a lot of changes to my setup, trying out some new camera stuff, and hopefully soon I'll be able to set up some better lighting. I make videos every 2 weeks, and try to improve them each time for you guys, and we're trying something a little different this time. As you saw from the title, I'm actually releasing the first development build of Tempered Flames for you guys to play around with and do some testing. So if you want to follow progress on this game, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any updates, and make sure you stay until the end to see how far progress has come. I'm really excited to show you guys. So as you saw in the intro, I've been writing a lot of momentum making all these changes to the game. I decided I want to make an immersive sim after all, and I'm now taking a lot of inspiration from Dishonored, you know, that game about a corrupt political society trying to force people to take a cure to a mysterious plague.
My elixir will banish the plague from this city.
Ironic.
So I began adding the skeleton of a bunch of different abilities I want in the game. All these low poly walls and torches you see here are from a terrific asset pack, by the way, except the crates, which I quickly made. From the start of making this game, two things were very important to me for development: the narrative and the visuals. Because as I say in most of my videos, my primary reason for making games is to tell stories. And I also wanted to tread on new ground and experiment with making cool visual effects. So naturally, I spent a lot of time drafting a whole new story idea for the game. It will still be set in the same fantasy world I had set up for the original game, but now it'll follow humans instead of elves. Essentially, before the game begins, there was a huge revolution that took place in the kingdom's capital. The protagonist's father was a royal guard and distant kinsman of the king, but the protagonist himself was very young during the revolution. During this time, the entire royal family was killed, but the boy managed to escape. The player begins the game in the capital of the chaotic regime, making ends meet as a tavern bouncer. The game will revolve around getting to the bottom of a highly secretive and complex plot for power and control, where the protagonist will have to discover the truth to save the people he loves the most. I'll explain a bit more later, but as for gameplay, I really wanted to focus on making the abilities look and feel great. I spent a lot of time designing this really cool spark particle effect based on the tutorials of a great YouTuber whose name I unfortunately can't pronounce, but there's a link on the screen, so go check him out. I really like the way this lightning effect turned out. It's not perfect and it will need a lot of work and some post-processing bloom, of course, but it'll do for now. I also tried to make an electric effect that will trigger on certain objects when you use your spark ability on them. The plan is to give the player various ways to manipulate levels, whether that be charging objects with electricity or lighting things on fire. So imagine you're running from an enemy, okay, so he's chasing you, you shut the door in his face, and then you electrify the doorknob, and bam, you set the perfect trap, and that's exactly the kind of thing that I want to do for this game, and that's only a sliver of the game's potential. Alright, so another thing that I knew would be really important for the demo was the UI. So I spent some time designing icons for an in-game ability selection menu. It was a lot of fun to mess around with, but these are very temporary. I'm hoping for this to eventually look more like an ability wheel and to slow down time while it's up, kind of like in The Witcher 3. Let me know what you think of that idea down in the comments and what I could do to make it look great. Have I mentioned that I tend to overscope most of my projects? When making something big, beautiful, and messy like this, sometimes you realize that things just don't go according to plan. And I'm beginning to think that I overscoped the sprint a little bit too. Essentially what I wanted to do was to get an enemy into the game. After making Chasing Shadows for Ludum Dare with Steve, I thought it would be pretty easy to deal with. All I wanted to do is get the enemy to open doors while walking towards the player. It shouldn't have been difficult, but unfortunately I just couldn't quite get it to work. So I had to make a decision. Get a broken, messy build without any real features in it for you guys, or maybe add one more ability into the game and have some fun making other cool effects for it. I decided it would be a lot more worthwhile to create a new ability and make it more fun and more interesting than the sparks. The main draw of the sparks is how you can use it to mess with enemies, so I figured if I'm not releasing a build with enemies, I need to make an ability with a more environmental challenge aspect to it. Also, how can you make a game called Tempered Flames and not have any fire in the game? Like, come on. So that was the next step, create a fire ability. Unfortunately, the particle system I imported was rendering really weirdly, so I followed another great tutorial to create a look much more like what I had originally intended. If you saw my first video for Tempered Flames, you'd have seen the kind of toon shader look I was going for at first, but I absolutely love the way this fire looks. I may have gone a little overboard with lighting things on fire, but wow, doesn't that look great. I also thought it would kind of suck to put the development build up with only this tiny little room to play in, so I figured I'd need to do some level design. I wanted to create some problems with open-ended creative solutions for the player to solve, and this build will offer a really quick foretaste of what that might look like. Since it's an early build, it will be a very simple example, but it will still showcase what I'm going for pretty well. Well, I promised I'd tell you guys a bit more about the story for the game. I think this time lapse is probably a good time to do that. So essentially, the current state of the Imperial City is that the new regime began to trade with elves, whereas the old kingdom did not. The elves are bringing in powerful magical items never before seen by humans, granting their users remarkable abilities. The current regime wants to control these magical items, but a group that descended from the original revolutionaries wants to use them for themselves. When you begin the game as a bouncer, you'll see an elf noblewoman get attacked in the distance by some thugs. You realize that they actually stole one of these magical items from her, and it's your job to get them back. From this point on, I really want to develop a strong relationship between this elf woman and the player, in whatever way that may manifest throughout the player's choices, and make her central to the gameplay. I believe it's possible for a companion character to be done well, as proven by The Last of Us and Bioshock Infinite, if the character is compelling, and I believe I have crafted a very interesting and complicated character with a lot of secrets that the protagonist will have to discover if he wants to keep her safe. Let me know what you think of this idea. I don't want to give away too much just yet, but if you have any ideas on how to make this work, I'll be sure to read all of them in the comments. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the first playable pre-alpha build of Tempered Flames is finally ready. I can hardly believe I'm even saying that. This has been such an incredible journey, and thank you guys so much for joining me on this so far. So go play Tempered Flames. Let me know what you think of it. I'm really excited to hear all of your feedback and to hear what I can improve. If you want to see more videos like this, I promise to keep making videos about Tempered Flames every 2 weeks and to keep making them better and better for you guys. But in the meantime, I have a lot of other devlogs just like this one about Tempered Flames and about all my other projects, so check those out if you're interested. Stay tuned for more and have a great week.